Welcome to Get Right for Sunday, a podcast designed to help you prepare for Sunday and beyond. I am Pastor Wright, and each week I have a conversation exploring the Bible readings for this upcoming Sunday. Join us as we discuss how the lessons are applied to our daily life in Christ. Welcome to Get Right for Sunday interview, and today we have a special guest. It is Vicar-Elect Hill. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is a really great way to get things started. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's a whole idea that, baptism by fire, to jump right into this, to ask all the great questions, and to get you acclimated to the fun that you will have. Of course, we have Vicar Leeper, who gets to also correct everything I say.
That's right.
Vicarage.
Yep. You're not getting rid of me yet.
No, not yet. Well, the first softball question, and it's also the biggest question. Tell us about yourself.
Well, that's a pretty narrow, narrow avenue to pursue here. So I'm 27. I've been happily married for almost 3 years now. My wife's name is Christy. We're both from St. Louis, so not too far from home here. Made the nice short drive over today. Before coming to the seminary, I was a high school teacher for 3 years in Georgia, South Cobb High School, where I taught ninth grade literature and composition in those 3 years. And then we decided to make a change and come to the seminary. So luckily enough for us, we got to come home, if you will, for a few years. And so we've been doing that. So from St. Louis, what else should I go for here in the get to know you? We don't have any children yet. Most people ask that, especially at the seminary. They go, How many kids do you have? We don't have any kids. My wife would probably love for me to mention that we have 3 cats, though. So
What are their names?
We have Willow, who's kind of the original. She's about 3 years old. And then we have Stella and Oliver.
Ooh, okay.
And those are the recent additions. They just turned 1 a couple weeks ago, so they're still learning the curve as far as who gets the food and how to do all that. But they keep us pretty entertained at home. So we do have that. We both come from pretty big families. Christy is the youngest of 4. She has an older brother who lives in St. Charles with his wife and their newborn daughter. And then she has a twin brother and sister as well. And then I'm actually the oldest of 6. So we're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. And my family, my parents and my 5 siblings live in Florida. They live in Winter Garden, Florida. So unfortunately, we don't get to visit as much as we'd like, but every time we do, it seems like a nice little vacation to have an excuse to
Especially
go to Florida.
Yeah.
It's always a good time. So so there's that, but I'm the oldest, like I said. I've got a 19-year-old brother, a 13-year-old sister, a 10-year-old brother, and then twin brother and sister. And they all just wrapped up school yesterday, so I'm sure they're already driving my mom nuts at home. But
as they should.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time at the Hill house. There's always something going on, but there's a little bit. We can go into more, but that might be a good start.
Well, I got a follow-up question to that, actually. First, a comment. I'm the oldest of 7, so I've got you beat by just 1.
See, I'm the oldest of 3, so I feel really inadequate in all this.
I've actually got a twin brother and sister. I'm not a twin, but I have a brother and sister that are twins as well.
Yeah, so, Christy and I are a little concerned because there's twins on both sides of our family.
Right.
So we're not sure if that's going to lead to anything.
You never know. But my follow-up question is actually about your church experience.
Sure.
So what has been kind of your church background? Like, what kind of church did you grow up in? What kind of church did you do your field work in for the first 2 years of seminary?
Yeah. So I grew up in a pretty large church, about 2,000 members, Concordia Kirkwood. That's where I grew up, and I went to school there as well, Christ Community Lutheran School. So it was definitely a little different than my field work, which is kind of the opposite. It's in Afton, Missouri, a little smaller congregation, maybe about 150 members. But everybody is just so warm and welcoming. It was kind of funny. We went and visited one time, and with that size, you really can't hide anywhere.
Right.
So we were kind of immediately welcomed and brought into the fold, and it's been really great. The last 2 years, one of the things I really wanted out of my field work was somewhere where I could be involved and be helping, and that's been exactly what I've gotten. Usually helping every Sunday, a couple times, multiple services on a Sunday. So it's been a really great learning experience, especially coming from a big church where you really saw the pastors do everything.
Right.
So it was kind of like I wanted somewhere where, as a field worker, I could get my hands dirty and really start to learn some of these things that you'll eventually do as a pastor. So it's been really great. The people have been wonderful. It's really been our first experience with a smaller congregation, so we really didn't know what to expect or what things would be like, and it's really been a fantastic time. So we look forward to going back to them in fourth year and saying hi, because we've made some good friends there. But it's a traditional congregation. Pretty much worship right out of the hymnal, which I think there's some similarity to what we have here. So it's been a really nice experience, a lot of learning. I'd be lying if I didn't say there were also some mistakes along the way.
That's what we learned.
But they were very generous and patient with me as I was kind of feeling my way through things. So I feel a lot more comfortable today than when I first got to the seminary and helping out with worship and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, from Georgia to coming back here, what was the decision or why'd you come to the seminary? What brought you to the seminary?
Yes, that's a classic question for the seminarian. So seminary was kind of something that growing up, I didn't have any thought of it. I know some people are like, I knew from kindergarten that I wanted to be a pastor. I wish I could say that. That wasn't my experience. We went to church every Sunday. We were a faithful church-going family. But when I was younger, I was much more involved with sports than probably anything else. So that took a lot of my time. And I didn't ever really think about going into ministry. When I got to high school, I formed pretty quickly a good relationship with the campus pastor there at Lutheran South, Rev Roma, shout out. And he always kind of wanted to make sure I was doing okay and just wanted to talk. And those were some great experiences that kept me on a good track in those high school years. And through that relationship, he kind of started to plant that bug of, have you thought about going to the seminary? And I was still like, no, I've never thought of that. And so I kind of just brushed it off, didn't really think a whole lot about it, and then graduated high school, went to college. I started off at the University of Missouri in St. Louis, where I did my freshman year of college. And then I transferred to Mizzou, University of Missouri in Columbia. And that's where I got my degree in secondary education. So there was always a desire to work with people, to help people in some way. And I think that kind of led me to the teaching degree.
Right.
And that's what I was planning on doing for the rest of my life. And I took a job in Georgia at a high school there. And a lot of good experiences, a lot of really good days. Also some days that were a little frustrating.
Can only imagine.
You know how it is with high schoolers. Sometimes they can make you work a little bit. So as I was teaching, I was an English teacher, like I mentioned. So that was kind of my focus. I always had a draw to language and public speaking, that kind of thing, which took me to the English route. And as I was teaching English, especially in my third year, I probably spent a little more time at home listening to sermons and Bible studies and that kind of thing. A lot of issues, etc. I kind of got hooked there,
Yeah.
and so mowing the grass or doing chores, I'd have something on. Pastor Wolf Miller on YouTube.
Yeah.
I got into his channel pretty big.
We had Jeff Schwartz was a previous
Oh, really?
interview on this podcast. Actually, he was one of our. Might have been the last interview that we did was the Jeff Schwartz interview from from Issues, Etc.
Yeah, well, that small Lutheran world.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I kind of found myself spending a lot of my free time in Scripture and Bible studies and sermons, like I said, and it was kind of those thoughts that had been planted way back in high school started to creep up a little bit, and well, I'm thinking about this an awfully lot. It just wouldn't seem to go away, and you know how it is when you kind of get into God's Word. It's kind of the one thing that you're never you never get full of. It always leaves you wanting more.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was experiencing, and it was just kind of this craving to learn more about doctrine and okay, what do we actually believe, and why do we say that, and what do other denominations believe? So I kind of started to spend most of my time dealing with those issues, and it kind of just took over my free time. And so I was like, okay, there's something to this. I probably shouldn't just ignore this. And kind of compounded with that, one of our friends from high school actually took a call to a church in Georgia about 45 minutes away from us. So the more we started hanging out with him and his now wife, who was actually living with us briefly, the more he kind of made clear, well, the seminary, we kind of need guys. We need guys to step up and
It's true.
and go into ministry. And so he kind of reinforced these thoughts I was having, and that kind of led us to where we are. I remember we had just visited my family in Florida, and we were driving back to Georgia. And I'm driving, and Christy's in the passenger seat, and it kind of got quiet. We weren't listening to anything, and we were just kind of there with each other, and it got quiet. And she could kind of tell something was on my mind. So she asked, what are you thinking? And I kind of hesitated. I said, I'm not sure what to do with this, but I've been thinking about the seminary. What do we do with this? Like, I'm not sure. What do we do? And she kind of was the one to say, I think you need to do this. And that was kind of the last step I needed to really think about it a little harder, and a lot of prayer, and finally contacted the admissions office at Concordia Seminary, and here we are. 2 years later. So,
Well, with that and kind of a follow-up, why St. Louis, outside of the fact that it's home for you?
Well, I should warn you before you answer this question.
He's like,
Pastor Wright is from Fort Wayne. He graduated from Fort Wayne. I should warn you just before you answer.
Pastor, I thought you said there were no trick questions. I think for us, a big part of it was being able to be near family for a little while. We kind of factored in, Christy had been away from her family in St. Louis. She had lived in Georgia for 6 years at that point. I'd just been down there for 3. But really the only thing we were missing in our Georgia life, which seems like a long time ago, the only thing we were really missing was that time with family. And we were really kind of longing for that. So to be able to come back to St. Louis and get some of that family time in, especially when you consider going into ministry, you really don't know what the future is going to be or where you're going to end up. So it seemed like a pretty good way to get some of that family time that we had been missing. And it made sense as well with Christy's career. She's a nurse, an ICU nurse, and it seemed to be a little easier for her to try to come back and get a job where she did have some relationships. So that was a contributing factor as well. I won't dive into it too deeply because I know there's that rivalry there.
It is all good. No rivalry. No, the connections between the Sims. We support, love, and just excited.
Well, I guess I should also say he's also going to be a St. Louis grad soon. So he really does have his foot in both camps here.
Yeah, I'm in the STM program.
Oh,
so, yeah.
So, what is it? Conflicting, conflict of interest, loyalties?
Yeah.
It's all good. It's all fun.
It's all good. The only rivalry is on the basketball court. We all know that. And we won't speak about that.
Yes,
I think St. Louis lost the last time they played. So we're not going to bring that up.
Well, you got a tour of this church and school, and you don't know much here. What are you looking forward to outside of just learning? But do you have any big aspirations? What are you curious about? What are you interested in here, specifically here at Holy Cross?
Sure. One of the big things that I kind of brought up again and again in our vicarage interviews and all the forms you get to fill out and talk about what you'd like to.
Yeah, how many times do you have to sign your name in all this?
You get pretty good at it. It's not quite as many times as like buying a house, but you do.
That's what I was going to ask,
You get pretty good at it. But one of the things I stressed was that I wanted to be somewhere with a school, if possible. Coming from that teaching background, I've kind of been missing that the last couple years, that chance to interact with youth. And I think it goes back to I had so many strong influences when I was in high school, not only our campus pastor, but a couple teachers that really kind of had a strong influence on my life, and that was kind of what led me into teaching in the first place. So I'm really excited to work with, in any capacity, with the school that you guys have here. That's something that I haven't really been exposed to in my field work or in any other experiences the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully I remember how to teach a little bit. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
Seems like another world, another lifetime, just a couple of years. But so I'm excited for that. And hopefully, when you're teaching, you're always learning as well from your students. So I look forward to that.
Well, Vicar Leeper, do you have any questions?
Well, I think I got one of the big questions that I wanted to ask out of the way. So I guess vicarage oriented. What are you hoping that you will be able to say when you're sitting in my chair a year from now? Like, what are you hoping that you'll be able to look back and say, like, wow, I really learned this, or like, wow, I'm able to do this? Or as you sit across the, chair from maybe the next vicar to say, like, this is the greatest takeaway that I had. What would you hope that would be?
I think for me, it might just be the day in and day out of building relationships with everybody from the church to the school. As a teacher, you do plenty of that with your students, but your interaction with your colleagues and with the administration, the people above you, is pretty minimal.
Yeah.
So it's I kind of joked where my coworkers when I was teaching high school were my students. I never really worked with adults, so it's one thing to do that, but to really get the ins and outs of what is it like to do ministry, to work inside of a team, to take care of your responsibilities, but not overstep your bounds, especially as a vicar.
Right.
I know that can be a balancing act. So those kinds of just working with Pastor Wright and everyone here, where you get that sense of you're contributing to this ministry that's moving forward. I think that's kind of my biggest anxiety, but also something I'm really looking forward to because I've never really had to experience that.
Right. Well, and you are lucky because Holy Cross is a church and school.
The greatest congregation ever.
Yes. Holy Cross is a church and school that will step up and want to get to know you.
Yes.
And you will build connections and relationships here. They'll make sure it happens.
Yes.
So, because even over COVID, they did that for me. And that was really hard for all of us. Because, when I started vicarage, we weren't even having church. Like, when I showed up, it was me and Pastor Wright, and for the first little bit, Vicar Pearson, And it was just us there with Mrs. Lasky playing the organ. And that's all it was for
Yeah.
the first
We got to
couple
preach
weeks.
to the camera.
It was off. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was really, really hard. And so to go from that and to see how hard people still tried to have a connection with me, to build relationships, it's incredible. And it's what makes Holy Cross, I think, kind of special, is those relationships that you build. So that's definitely something I think you'll be able to say a year from now.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Another thing, as you were talking, and you're talking about worship and preaching to the camera, I am a little excited to eventually get up into that elevated pulpit.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen one of those before.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's not as high up as the one in St. Lorenz in Frankenmuth, but it's up there. Don't look down.
What is it? 7 steps up.
Yeah.
No, it is nice. And
It
you get
actually
to
is.
see and-
I didn't think I would like it. I always thought I would be kind of an out of the pulpit preaching guy, but preaching in the pulpit has really grown on me. And maybe it is the pulpit here where it just does feel like you have a nice perspective, being able to really see people well. So I don't know.
I like it.
Yeah.
Vicar-Elect Hill, do you have any questions for myself, Vicar Leeper, or even our listeners?
Questions. Those will probably come out as I spend a little more time here. Maybe a comment. Can I give a comment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please be patient as I try to learn your names, especially coming from a little smaller congregation. That's challenging enough to learn, 100, 150 names, but more than that might be a little bit of a learning curve. So please be patient with me. I will do my best. That's my comment. That's my disclaimer.
There you go.
So I can now
Up front, say that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. I'm excited about the year that's coming. As I told you before we were recording, you're coming into this wonderful transition and the opportunities for not only work, relationship, but the new things of Holy Cross. They get to be yours. And I'm excited to work with you. I'm excited for all that the Lord has put before us. And I look forward to the joy of the ministry with you. So, well, thank you for listening, and God's peace and blessings be upon you. Thank you for listening to Get Right for Sunday. I know that your time is valuable, and of all the things that you could have watched or listened to, you have chosen to deepen your biblical understanding with Get Right for Sunday. Would you take a moment to give a 5-star rating of this podcast on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast platform? This actually helps others to be able to find Get Right for Sunday. Again, thank you for your time, your prayers, and support.